The Philadelphia 76ers might have assembled the most talented roster in the NBA, but will all that talent actually translate into a championship? Or could it become one of the biggest disappointments in league history? Before we can truly comprehend the absolute powder keg Philadelphia just built for the 2026-27 season, we have to rewind the tape. Back to a time when a man named Sam Hinkie looked at the landscape of the NBA and realized a horrifying truth. The absolute worst place to be in professional basketball isn't at the bottom, it's being mediocre. Instead of fighting tooth and nail just to be a sacrificial lamb as an 8th seed every single year, Hinkie did the unthinkable. He decided to lose on purpose. He intentionally hoarded draft picks. He willingly accepted historically awful losing seasons. He focused exclusively on landing future, generational superstars. He asked a desperate, hard-working city to do one simple, incredibly difficult thing: trust the process. The plan was undeniably simple in theory. Lose now, draft elite world-class talent, eventually build an unstoppable dynasty. In 2014, the front office took their first massive, franchise-altering gamble. They drafted a physically dominant, towering big man from Cameroon named Joel Embiid.
Pick in the 2014 NBA Draft, the Philadelphia 76ers select Joel Embiid.
But they made this selection fully knowing a terrifying secret. His foot was broken. They knew he would miss significant, precious time. The risk was astronomical. If his foot didn't heal, he could become the next Greg Oden, a tragic what-if. But the organization believed his superstar potential far outweighed the danger. They saw a player with the defensive footwork of a prime Hakeem Olajuwon and the sheer offensive power of Shaquille O'Neal. They knew he could change the franchise forever if he could just get on the floor. But the losing didn't stop. It wasn't supposed to. By 2016, the Sixers had hit absolute rock bottom. They finished with an abysmal 10 wins and 72 losses. It was a historically humiliating season that made them the laughingstock of the sports world. But the reward was exactly what they tanked for. They earned the #1 overall pick, and with it, they selected Ben Simmons. At LSU, Simmons wasn't just a good player. He was viewed as a once-in-a-generation prospect. He was 6'10", an elite passer, a relentless rebounder who could grab the ball off the rim and immediately push the pace like a freight train in transition. He could defend every single position on the floor. The one glaring weakness? His jump shot. But many analysts and scouts believed everything else in his arsenal was so blindingly elite that the shooting simply wouldn't matter. Several prominent NBA voices actually compared him to the greatest player of this generation, LeBron James.
Hey, LeBron. Ben Simmons is here. We're all good.
ESPN draft analyst Jay Billis described Simmons as a LeBron-like playmaker because of his overwhelming size, speed, and court vision. Fran Fraschilla repeatedly compared Simmons' innate ability to read the floor to LeBron's. Former NBA executive and analyst Mike Schmitz praised Simmons as an oversized point forward in the exact LeBron mold. Numerous scouts used phrases like the closest prospect to LeBron since LeBron. No one claimed Simmons would instantly be better than the king, but many believed he could become the league's next dominant, oversized point guard. Philadelphia thought they had finally found the second superstar to pair with Joel Embiid. The foundation of a dynasty had finally been poured. Then, almost instantly, everything went completely wrong. Ben Simmons broke his foot before playing a single NBA game. He missed his entire rookie season. And ironically, Joel Embiid was also still recovering from his own endless string of injuries. For months on end, Philadelphia's two franchise players weren't even on the court together. They were trapped in rehabilitation rooms, watching the team lose, waiting for a future that felt like a complete mirage. By 2017, the Sixers were desperate to complete their ultimate Big Three. They already held the 3rd overall pick in the draft, but they didn't want to wait for the talent to fall to them. They packaged future assets and traded with their fiercest rival, the Boston Celtics, just to hijack the #1 overall pick. Why? Because they believed a dynamic kid from Washington named Markelle Fultz was the missing piece to a championship puzzle. At Washington, Fultz looked like the perfect modern guard. He could shoot from deep, he could create off the dribble, he could finish through contact at the rim, he could pass with surgical precision. He averaged over 23 points per game as a freshman. Scouts universally considered him one of the safest #1 picks in years. Philadelphia envisioned a terrifying new reality for the rest of the NBA. Simmons, Fultz, Embiid, the league's next unquestioned dynasty. Instead, another freak disaster struck. Markelle Fultz suddenly lost his jump shot. It wasn't just a cold streak. It became one of basketball's strangest, most heartbreaking psychological and physical mysteries. Whether caused by shoulder problems, mechanical tweaks, or a complete collapse of confidence, Fultz could no longer shoot like he had in college. His free throw form became entirely unrecognizable. It was painful to watch. The undisputed #1 pick never became the star Philadelphia expected. Eventually, the Sixers were forced to trade him away. Another piece of the process, gone in a flash. Yet, despite the Fultz catastrophe, the sheer talent on the roster was too much to fail completely. In 2018, Philadelphia finally broke through the dark clouds. They won 52 games. The city went wild. Joel Embiid became an undisputed all-star, dominating the paint at will. Ben Simmons finally took the floor and captured Rookie of the Year. The future looked blindingly bright. The Sixers reached the Eastern Conference semifinals, eventually falling to Boston, but everyone believed it was just the beginning of something special. Instead of waiting for their young core to grow naturally, the front office made a ruthless, aggressive move. They decided to go all in. They traded for established stars. First, Jimmy Butler, one of the toughest, most relentless competitors on the planet, a man who refused to lose and demanded absolute perfection in the locker room. Then, Tobias Harris. The message to the league was unmistakable. The championship window was officially wide open. The 2019 playoffs became the absolute high point of the process era. Philadelphia pushed the eventual champion Toronto Raptors to a blood-soaked Game 7, May 12, 2019. 4 seconds left on the clock, game tied at 90. Kawhi Leonard caught the ball in the deep corner, fading out of bounds over the massive, outstretched arm of Joel Embiid. The shot went up, the buzzer sounded, the ball hit the rim. It bounced 4 times and fell through. Toronto won, 92-90. Kawhi dropped 41 points. Embiid walked off the floor in tears, completely heartbroken. To this day, many firmly believe that Sixers roster had a legitimate chance to win the championship if that shot had missed. It remains the deepest playoff run of the process era, 1 win away from the conference finals. And then, the front office made what many consider the single biggest mistake in franchise history. Instead of keeping Jimmy Butler, Philadelphia chose Tobias Harris. Jimmy Butler walked away to Miami. Many fans still view this as the fatal decision that destroyed the franchise's soul. Jimmy later led Miami to multiple NBA Finals, proving he was the ultimate late-game warrior.
Me? Tobias Harris over me?
Philadelphia never replaced his leadership. They never replaced his clutch scoring. Desperate to patch the hole, the Sixers signed Al Horford. The fit was an absolute nightmare. The court spacing suffered immensely. Embiid had 0 room to operate in the paint because Horford and Simmons clogged the floor. The experiment was a total disaster. After only 1 awkward season, Horford was traded away. And then, the real collapse began. Defenses across the NBA discovered Ben Simmons' fatal flaw. He wouldn't shoot. He refused to take jump shots. Opponents literally stopped guarding him outside the paint, sagging off to double-team Embiid. The entire issue reached its catastrophic peak in the 2021 playoffs against the underdog Atlanta Hawks. Late in a critical Game 7, Simmons spun into the paint. He had a wide-open dunk right in front of him. Trae Young was the only defender anywhere near him, but he passed it out. The Sixers were eliminated on their home floor. Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid publicly questioned his decisions after the game. The relationship broke down completely. It was over. Ben Simmons would never play another game for Philadelphia. Philadelphia needed a miracle. They needed an escape hatch from the overwhelming toxicity. So they made another massive, franchise-altering gamble. They traded the exiled Ben Simmons for former MVP James Harden. The hope was undeniably simple on paper. Harden's elite perimeter creation, combined with Embiid's terrifying interior dominance, equals a championship parade down Broad Street. At first, it looked incredibly promising. Their pick-and-roll offense was mathematically unstoppable. Defenses had absolutely no answer for the spacing and the sheer offensive gravity both players commanded. But once again, the dark cloud of the process lingered. Nagging injuries, wildly inconsistent playoff performances, and bubbling chemistry issues prevented the partnership from ever reaching the NBA Finals. Harden would look like a god in Game 1, only to disappear completely when the light shone the brightest in Game 7. Eventually, history ruthlessly repeated itself. James Harden grew unhappy. He demanded a trade. Another era, another championship window ended in flames and frustration. But while the expensive veteran stars constantly came and went, complaining, failing, and demanding trades, one young draft pick quietly became the franchise's absolute saving grace, Tyrese Maxey. Selected 21st overall in the 2020 NBA Draft, Maxey wasn't supposed to be the savior. He was drafted to be a rotational spark plug off the bench, but he dramatically, explosively outperformed every single expectation placed upon him. Driven by a relentless, infectious work ethic, he developed into a high-scoring, all-star caliber guard. His blinding speed and deep three-point range became the engine that kept the Sixers alive. For the very first time in the entire process era, Philadelphia had found a true cornerstone entirely outside the lottery. Yet, no matter how good Maxey became, or who the front office brought in, one massive, inescapable problem never disappeared: Joel Embiid's health. Across multiple seasons, the big man dealt with a horrifying, tragic list of ailments: knee injuries, foot injuries, facial fractures, orbital fractures, torn thumb ligaments, knee soreness, devastating surgeries, and untimely illnesses right in the middle of critical playoff runs. Almost every single postseason featured Embiid playing hurt, wearing a mask, limping down the court, or missing critical games entirely. The franchise built a billion-dollar basketball empire entirely around him, but they rarely had him fully healthy when the calendar finally turned to May and June. Because of this brutal reality, few contenders in NBA history have changed identities as often as Philadelphia. The franchise desperately cycled through multiple championship cores. Version 1 was the dream of Embiid and Simmons. Version 2 aggressively added Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris. Version 3 awkwardly replaced Butler with Al Horford. Version 4 brought James Harden into the fold alongside a rising Tyrese Maxey. Version 5 introduced Paul George in 2024. The organization continually reinvented the roster around Embiid in a frantic, exhausting pursuit of a ring. Just look at the playoff results during the process era. It is a timeline of pure, unadulterated sports agony. 2018, lost Eastern Conference semifinals. 2019, lost Eastern Conference semifinals in a heartbreaking Game 7 to Toronto. 2020, swept in the first round. 2021, lost Eastern Conference semifinals to Atlanta. 2022, lost Eastern Conference semifinals. 2023, lost Eastern Conference semifinals. 2024, lost in the first round. 2025, missed the playoffs entirely as injuries utterly ravaged the roster. 2026, lost Eastern Conference semifinals. The irony of the process is absolutely deafening. It succeeded in so many tangible, undeniable ways. It produced a dominant, generational MVP in Joel Embiid. It landed multiple #1 overall picks. It acquired massive box office stars like Jimmy Butler and James Harden. It uncovered Tyrese Maxey outside the lottery. It kept Philadelphia squarely in championship conversations for a decade. Yet despite all of those bold, aggressive moves, the franchise never advanced beyond the Eastern Conference semifinals. Injuries, draft disappointments, key departures, and failed roster fits repeatedly prevented the Sixers from reaching the NBA Finals. That massive tension between bold team building and repeated heartbreak is exactly what has defined Philadelphia's last decade. They were always just one piece away, always just one healthy knee away, which led them to the summer of 2024. After years of falling short, the 76ers entered the offseason with one clear, undeniable objective: acquire another superstar. no matter the cost. Team president Daryl Morey had deliberately and meticulously structured the team's salary cap for years to create maximum financial flexibility. After missing out with previous combinations, Philadelphia believed it had one last golden opportunity to maximize Embiid's prime championship window. The answer they aggressively chose was Paul George. George had just finished another stellar All-Star season in Los Angeles. Despite being in his mid-30s, he remained one of the NBA's premier two-way wings, a 9-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA selection, 4-time All-Defensive Team member. They had formed what many expected to be the franchise's best big three of the entire process era: Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George. The expectation wasn't merely to make the playoffs. The organization openly viewed this trio as its absolute best opportunity to finally shatter the second-round ceiling, to finally, truly compete for an NBA championship. Unfortunately, the injury curse returned immediately. It didn't even wait for opening night. The optimism barely lasted through the preseason. During a meaningless exhibition game against the Atlanta Hawks, George hyperextended his left knee. The injury forced him to miss the beginning of the regular season, drastically delaying the debut of Philadelphia's new superstar trio. It felt painfully, agonizingly familiar to Sixers fans. For years, the franchise had watched championship hopes unravel because of injuries. Now, before the season had truly begun, Paul George was already in street clothes. When George eventually returned, a new, frustrating problem emerged. Philadelphia simply could not keep all three stars healthy at the exact same time. Every time one returned to the lineup, another seemed to limp into the locker room. The continuity the franchise desperately needed never materialized. It made it impossible for the team to develop chemistry or establish consistent winning rotations. George's first season in Philadelphia became a nightmare series of setbacks. As injuries mounted across the entire roster, Philadelphia once again found itself staring into the same terrifying abyss. The talent was there, but the availability simply wasn't. Every single move was made with the exact same desperate goal: win a championship. While Joel Embiid was still an MVP-caliber player, yet every single version of the roster encountered a different, catastrophic obstacle. Paul George wasn't a separate story. He just became the latest expensive chapter in a decade-long search for the missing piece. Which brings us to right now. The 2026 to 2027 season. The Philadelphia 76ers have orchestrated yet another massive, earth-shattering roster overhaul, and this time, the names on the back of the jerseys are absolutely mind-blowing. This isn't just a rebuild. This is an all-out, star-studded final assault on the NBA. Joel Embiid remains the terrifying anchor. When he is on the floor, he is a devastating two-way force, an unstoppable post scorer with a silky mid-range game and elite rim protection. Tyrese Maxey is no longer a rising star. He is a solidified superstar, capable of dropping 40 points on any given night with lightning speed. But the front office didn't stop there. They couldn't afford to. They completely reinvented the supporting cast. They added V.J. Edgecombe, the electric guard from Baylor, selected 3rd overall in the 2025 NBA Draft, brings a ferocious level of athleticism, downhill scoring, and defensive intensity that this veteran team desperately lacked. He is explosive. He is fearless. He is exactly the kind of young injection of energy a heavy-legged team needs to survive an 82-game marathon. Then, they shocked the entire basketball world by acquiring Jaylen Brown, the ultimate two-way wing, a proven champion, a man who knows exactly what it takes to win in the bloodbath of the Eastern Conference. Brown provides the perimeter lockdown defense and secondary scoring that Philadelphia has been hopelessly searching for since Jimmy Butler walked out the door. And then, the move that completely broke the internet. The move that absolutely no one saw coming. LeBron James. At 41 years old, the greatest player of his generation decided to take his talents to the city of brotherly love. A 4-time champion, the NBA's all-time leading scorer, the ultimate floor general, surrounded by key bench pieces and orchestrated by the tactical genius of head coach Nick Nurse, this roster is utterly terrifying. Think about why they could be absolutely amazing. The elite scoring is completely off the charts. You have multiple players who can effortlessly create their own shot against any defender on earth. You have pure, undeniable championship experience in LeBron James and Jaylen Brown. They have been to the absolute summit. They know how to calm a locker room. They know how to execute in a Game 7. You have multiple All-NBA talents sharing the exact same floor. The defensive versatility is staggering. Brown, Edgecombe, and Embiid can completely suffocate opposing offenses and switch on every screen. And Maxey's continued growth means the Sixers can play at a blistering pace in transition, punishing teams before they can even set their half-court defense. For the first time in his entire career, Joel Embiid doesn't have to carry the entire offense on his back. LeBron can meticulously dissect the defense. He can feed Embiid in his perfect spots. He can let Maxey run wild. If this team clicks, they could be one of the greatest offensive juggernauts the league has ever seen. But this is Philadelphia, and in Philadelphia, nothing is ever that simple.
Typical Philly fashion, we get so close and then we lose.
The biggest concerns are glaring, and they could completely derail this supposed super team. First and foremost, Joel Embiid's health. It is the inescapable reality of the franchise. He is older now. His body has endured countless surgeries and grueling playoff battles. Can a roster heavily dependent on his interior presence survive if he goes down in April? Then you have to look at LeBron James. He is 41 years old. It is an unprecedented age for a primary focal point in the modern NBA. While his basketball IQ is immortal, his body still has physical limits. Relying on a man in his fifth decade to carry a team through the warfare of the Eastern Conference is an incredibly dangerous gamble. What happens when his legs get heavy in the fourth quarter of a playoff game? Chemistry is another massive ticking time bomb. This is a roster of massive egos and alpha personalities. Embiid is the franchise. LeBron is the king. Brown is a proven champion. Maxey is an exploding superstar. Who takes the final shot? Who sacrifices their statistics? Can Nick Nurse manage the massive ball dominance issues before frustration boils over? And because they spent massive amounts of capital acquiring these heavy hitters, their depth is severely compromised. If one starter suffers an injury, the entire rotation falls apart. And the Eastern Conference is a gauntlet of battle-tested contenders. Every single night will be a war. So how good will the 2026-27 Philadelphia 76ers actually be? In the regular season, expect them to pace themselves. Load management won't just be a strategy, it will be an absolute necessity. They are projected to finish with a solid regular season record, hovering around 48 to 51 wins. They will secure a middle playoff seed, likely third or fourth in the East. But the playoffs? That is an entirely different story. Odds makers still give them tremendous championship odds based purely on their overwhelming star power. The final verdict is a story of terrifying extremes. If they reach May with their core completely healthy and chemistry intact, they have the undeniable talent to win the NBA championship. LeBron's unmatched mind, Brown's ruthlessness, Maxey's blinding speed, and Embiid's dominance create a mathematically unsolvable equation. They could absolutely win it all. But history tells us that the process is cursed. It tells us that a freak injury or a locker room collapse is always waiting right around the corner. The Philadelphia 76ers might have finally assembled the most talented roster in NBA history, but if the basketball gods have taught us anything about this franchise, you should probably hold your breath. So now that we know exactly what is at stake, let's bookmark this moment after the season ends to see whatever happens. Whether they finally win the championship or suffer another heartbreaking collapse, drop your predictions down in the comments. Will the Sixers finally win it all, or does the curse of the process continue?